Honourable John Boscawen.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Members of the House and those observing the debate would know that it would be normal for the ACT Party to take their call immediately after the Green Party and before the Maori Party. But, sir, I took the opportunity to listen to Rahui Kartanei's speech this afternoon before I responded, Mr Speaker, and I thought it was very important to hear the justification both for the treaty clause and for the process before I responded. Mr Speaker, I will deal in turn with the comments of Ruth Dyson and Rahui Kartanei, but what I would like to refute, first of all, Mr Speaker, is one of her last statements when she said that the sole reason for the ACT Party opposing this bill, as she was advised this morning, was because of the clause. That is absolutely not correct. That is not the sole reason. We didn't decide to oppose this bill this morning. We decided to oppose the bill this afternoon at 1 minute to 2. And the reason, Mr Speaker, that we decided to oppose the bill at 1 minute to 2, sir, is I notified the government last night that we were not happy about this process. I notified them that we have a confidence and supply agreement that we're absolutely committed to support, as Mr Stephen Joyce knows, the Minister of Communications, with regard to his UFB bill. But, sir, it is a mutual arrangement. It is an arrangement that calls for respect on both sides. And, sir, it is a condition of our confidence and supply agreement that we be given 48 hours' notice of any significant amendments. My advice yesterday morning was that Heather Roy, who is the ACT MP in the House on Thursday afternoon, was not aware until 5 o'clock when she walked into the House and heard the speech of the Honourable Ruth Dyson objecting very strongly to this bill, that this clause was to go into this bill, sir, and it was the first notification that the ACT Party had of it. Heather Roy raised it at our caucus yesterday morning. I took it up with the National Party last night. I discussed it further with the National Party this morning, and I waited a response from Nick Smith when I came into the House just before 2 o'clock. And he gave me no evidence or advice whatsoever that this bill had been advised to the ACT Party prior to it being tabled in the House at 3:31 last Thursday. So let me refute, first of all, Rahui Carter's comments that the sole reason that we're opposing this bill, sir, is the clause. It is both the clause and the process. Sir, let me also refer to Rahui Kartanei's comments where she said, and I was very pleased to hear this from her, she said, less than a week ago, I successfully negotiated the introduction of a Treaty of Waitangi clause. Well, sir, less than a week ago was prior to 5 p.m. last Wednesday afternoon. And once again, I say to the government, we have a confidence and supply agreement. The ACT Party will respect it. We've been very, very good at providing stable government. We intend to provide that, Mr Speaker, all the way up to the November 26th election day, sir, Mr Speaker, but we will not be taken for granted. Mr Speaker, when Ruth Dyson rose this afternoon, she said that she was a little disappointed to be having to vote against this bill, and she referred in particular to the fact that she hadn't been, or her party hadn't been properly consulted, certainly on this particular clause. And I, like Ruth Dyson, am also disappointed to be standing up here this afternoon, Speaker, and having to speak against this bill and the way in which it's been handled by the government. Mr Speaker, this is a very significant bill. The Treaty of Waitangi provision is a very significant provision, Mr Speaker, and if you have any doubt about that, one only has to listen to Rahui Kartanei's comments when she talked about it as a triumph for the Maori Party. Well, Mr Speaker, it's a pity that the other members of this House, it's a pity that other New Zealanders weren't actually accorded the respect from the National Party to actually tell New Zealanders what is actually in this bill, what they were planning, rather than simply tabling it as an SOP at 3:31 last Thursday afternoon. And, sir, what I'd like to do is to read and record into Hansard several paragraphs of Rahui Kartanei's press release from last Thursday. And it's headed up Maori Party succeeds in inserting treaty clause into Environment Protection Law. The Environment spokesperson for the Maori Party, Rahui Kātanei, is delighted her amendment to help, quote, recognise and respect the Crown's responsibility to take appropriate account of the Treaty of Waitangi, end quote, in the Environment Protection Bill was supported during the committee stages of the bill today. The amendment ensures that the Environmental Protection Authority and any person on behalf of the bill must, quote, comply with the requirements of an Environmental Act in relation to the treaty, end quote. Amidst all the noise of the political theatre played out over recent days, it is extremely important to me, being she, Rahui Kātanei, and the Maori Party, that we consolidate and strengthen the role of the treaty as a living document. I hope that my amendment will enable tangata whenua to exercise influence and authority in decision-making processes related to environmental protection, said Mrs Kātanei. Reading going on to the second to last paragraph, and I'll skip a few paragraphs, it says here, it is also gratifying that through this SOP we will be able to maintain and improve opportunities for tangata whenua to contribute to the decision-making process through the establishment of the Maori Advisory Committee. Mrs Kātanei, in her press release, asks the question, what does this all mean? What does this all mean? Well, it says it means we are one step closer to understanding and acting in a way which upholds Article 2 of the Treaty of Waitangi. In effect, chiefly authority over lands, villages and all things precious. And, Mr Speaker, it was obviously news to the members of the Labour opposition. It was news to members of the ACT Party. And, Mr Speaker, I actually wonder how many national ministers this was also news, because I can think of a few. And I wonder how many National Party backbenchers this is news to, Mr Speaker. And I wonder how many New Zealanders this is news to, Mr Speaker. I wonder how many New Zealanders know that we are today voting on an act, or a bill rather, that is going to go further towards understanding and acting on chiefly authority over lands, villages and all things precious. Mr Speaker, the ACT Party stands of one law for all. We absolutely stand for private property rights, absolutely stand, whether they be Maori private property rights, Pacifica private property rights, Mr Speaker, or Pākehā private property rights. That is absolutely fundamental, one law for all. That is a theme that we have campaigned on for several years, Mr Speaker, and there is no party, Mr Speaker, there is no party, I suspect, that is more concerned for Māori and Māori underachievement than the ACT Party, Mr Speaker. And I say that, Mr Speaker, because my colleague, Sir Roger Douglas, introduced, sir, a bill that would allow young people the first opportunity on the employment ladder at the age of 16 and 17, youth rates, sir, and the National Party voted against it despite opposing it strongly in opposition. And, Mr Speaker, I am making a promise to the House this afternoon. I'm making a promise on behalf of my colleagues, and I'm making a promise on behalf of Dr Brash, the leader of the ACT Party outside of Parliament, that we are going to spend the next 7 months, sir, making sure New Zealanders understand these issues very, very honestly. And so let me come back, two quick points. Comment was made that the ACT Party actually supported the Treaty of Waitangi at the committee stages. Let me write into Hansard, Mr Speaker, that is not the case. Heather Roy voted against this treaty clause in the committee stages last Thursday afternoon. She continued to vote for other aspects of the bill, in part in the committee stages, but she voted against this clause, and the ACT Party is voting against this bill. I should stress, Mr Speaker, that the main bill is the Environment Protection Authority bill. We're voting against that. We'll be voting against the Climate Change Response Amendment bill. There are four other, you recall, Mr Speaker, the original bill was broken into 6 parts. We will be supporting the other 4, but we will certainly be voting against the Environmental Protection Bill as it now is, sir, with the treaty clause. One quick point, Mr Speaker, emissions trading scheme. I have to say that Ruth Dyson continues to perpetuate the untruth The ETS, sir, what's causing us to pay more for electricity, Mr Speaker, is the $350 million annual subsidies to foresters, Mr Speaker. $350 million for trees substantially planted before 2008. It's a message I haven't had time to elaborate, but I certainly will in future.